Now, what I'm saying is, you cannot experimentally confirm that. There's no observations that confirm that. There's just calculations. There's just calculations.
So you're telling me there's no, so they've just come up with the theory from nowhere?
No, it's not from nowhere. They're taking what we understand about physics, they're extrapolating it to something that we can't observe, and coming to a conclusion.
Okay, so with regards to what we understand with what they've observed in physics, is that correct?
Sorry?
So they're taking it from what we've observed in physics?
Well, of course.
So you just said there's no observations.
No, but there's not. No.
Of course,
I think
that's twisting the
But then there's observations for the multiverse.
Because not. Because again, you said that's a theory.
Okay, but you're being completely inconsistent. Let me explain.
You mentioned.
Let me explain how you're being inconsistent. Okay. What you can't do. Here's two things you can't do. You can't look through a telescope and see another universe. Okay. Nor can you observe what would happen if a constant were to change. We've never seen
I agree with
the consequences of that. So, in both cases, you cannot make a direct measurement. Okay? So if you're going to say, I'm not going to believe it because there's no direct measurements, you should not believe in the multiverse, and you should not believe in fine-tuning either. Okay? Now, what you can do is say, well, look, maybe we've learned some things about physics that allow us to extrapolate and come to a reasonable conclusion. In which case, you may be able to say things are finely tuned. But then you can also say on the same basis that there's a multiverse. Okay? So they're both on the same basis.
Now, can I explain why I disagree with that?
Okay.
I disagree with it for this reason. There are multiple variables with regards to why the universe can be fine-tuned. Multiple variables. Now,
I agree with that.
You've tried to disprove one of them. Yeah?
It's not that I've tried to disprove it, it's widely regarded as being disproved by cosmologists.
Okay, so let's say the cosmologists...
And that's in a textbook. You can see that in any astrophysics textbook.
I'll look into that.
Look up the flatness problem.
I'll look at the flatness problem. Now, with regards to that, so that's one variable. But the point I'm making to you is this.
Yes.
Let's say that one variable is something which scientists they've looked into, and you're saying it's most probable that there is a multiverse. I'll look into it to see, because I've heard there are major scientists that disagree with that and say that the whole idea of a multiverse being observed, it can't be done. I've read scientists say that, and you've agreed. Some people don't agree with the multiverse.
Of course there are. Absolutely.
Now my issue is this. Let's say you do disprove that one theory of fine-tuning. There are still multiple other theories which substantiate fine-tuning. Now you've mentioned. But
there are other things that aren't fine-tuned.
I know, but let me finish.
Okay.
So now you've mentioned with regards to the inflation and how, in that regard, fine-tuning is not. Right. Is not observable. So let's say you throw that out the window.
Yeah.
There's still the other issues to tackle now. And just simply saying there are people that disagree with that is not a strong point. Let me finish. It's not a strong point. You'd have to come out with disproving each one of them other theories, and the other area of fine-tuning to state in the first place. Okay, so now this is fine-tuning, which is disproved with regards to the inflation. Other things with regards to, there's many things which I've read into it, like the sun, the way that stars are created, the way carbon's created inside a star, things like that. There's a lot of fine-tuning done there which you'd have to go and disprove, and simply stating, wait, let me finish, but then simply stating, there's no consensus, and the cosmologists seem to have more consensus that there's a multiverse, and that's proven because of inflation.
Not proven.
It's highly probable.
I wouldn't even say that. I'd say there's evidence.
There's evidence. Okay, it's evidence. So
there's non-trivial evidence.
There's non-trivial evidence. Okay, so that's even less than it's proven. So now that still wouldn't remove the fact that you'd still have to disprove these other things. And what I'm stating is this: let's disregard the fact that there are people that disagree with that. There are people that disagree with everything. There's people that think the Earth is flat. Right. So that on its own is not an argument. That's not an argument to state there are people that disagree. That doesn't substantiate the claim.
I agree. I completely agree with you.
What substantiates the claim is going through each one of them things and then stating, this fine-tuning is not correct because of this. This is not correct because of this. That's how you disprove it. Now, my simple argument is this: because there are so many things, and you might say, it's only tens of things. There are many things which are not fine-tuned. But I'm stating because even them tens of things, it increases the probability of intelligent design simply due to the fact that it appears to be fine-tuned. That requires a creator. I'm stating, so for me as a theist, that's enough for me to say there are enough things.
So would you accept... Okay, so first of all, I want to go back to a point that you mentioned. You said there were scientists that disagreed with inflation and the multiverse. And that's very true. Okay? But if you listen to what those scientists say carefully,
I'll listen.
Right?
I'll look into
what you find is that they propose a cyclic universe as an alternative.
Okay.
So, for example, and I want to be upfront, there are very intelligent critics of the multiverse. Okay. So Roger Penrose is one. Okay, he's a very well-established scientist, one of the top guys in the field. And he's very critical.
Yes,
okay.
I've heard of these things.
He's one of the top guys in the field.
I think he's been nice as well.
He is Sir Roger Penrose, absolutely, yeah. He's one of the top guys in the field, okay? And he vehemently disagrees with inflation and the multiverse, okay? And he's got some very smart criticisms of it. Sorry, he's got some very smart. Is that my phone?
I think it's yours.
No, it's not mine.
It's not mine.
Okay, so he's got some very smart criticisms, okay? But he agrees.
The cyclic multiverse.
Sorry?
What did he say? The alternative is the cyclic.
But he's proposing a cyclic cosmology as an alternative because he agrees that you must have some features of inflation in your cosmology. Okay?
Yeah.
And therefore, what he's proposing is that the inflation happened before the proposed singularity.
Yeah.
Okay? So he's saying there must be a cyclic cosmology.
Okay.
And he thinks that there actually isn't fine-tuning. Okay. He says, I don't think that you can make the conclusion that there's any fine-tuning.
Okay,
and he's one of the top guys in the field, and he's one of these critics that the people quote when they want to attack the multiverse. Okay? Because he is a very highly regarded scientist. Okay? But if you follow what he's saying carefully, he's saying, one, he doesn't think there is fine-tuning, or he shouldn't be confident that there's any fine-tuning. Okay? He says we just wouldn't know what would happen if you change a constant, and we shouldn't pretend that we know what would happen. Okay? And the other thing he says is that he thinks the universe is cyclic, infinitely old into the past, and going infinite into the future. Okay? And he said even if there is fine-tuning, then it could be that within the cycles, you could have the different cycles of the cosmology having different constants, and that would solve it. So yet again, if you and now he's not the only one that does this. Another critic of the multiverse is Paul Steinerhard, and he has some other colleagues that make similar criticisms. But guess what? He says the same thing. He says that he thinks there's a cyclic cosmology. So when you say there are these critics of the multiverse, it's important not to quote them selectively. You have to follow through what they're actually saying. And if you follow through what they're saying, you're undermining your God as well.
And also, if you're being honest, I'm careful with that. Basically, with regards to that, what I say is that if you're gonna speak about that, of course you're right. There's no point in me trying to make it fit into a puzzle where I'm stating, okay, look, I agree with this theory simply because it matches my world viewpoint. It matches my religion. If the reality is different, then you have to state that.
Right.
I agree with you there.
Okay.
But what I'm saying to you simply is the fact that, okay, to begin with, there's multiple theories, which you need to look into. Of course, you need to look into the empirical evidence. If you want to go deep into it, look into it with regards to the flatness theory and other things you mentioned. Of course, you need to look into that. But as we stand as of now, there are many theories, and there's nothing which has been definitively proven as of now.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But that's true with fine-tuning as well.
With fine-tuning as well, okay. It's not being definitively disproven, but
it's not been definitively proven either.
It's not been definitively proven, But from what I've researched, a lot of major scientists do say that it appears to be.
But a lot of them have been misquoted.
Not Sir Roger Penrose and others.
A lot of them have been misquoted. So, for example, one of the most famous proponents of the fine-tuning argument is a guy called William Lane Craig. Have you heard of him?
Possibly.
He's a Christian theologian. A lot of Muslim Dawah courses have literally copied his words. Okay? He's probably the most famous proponent of this. He gave a list of scientists that said, we agree with fine-tuning. And I've actually met some of these scientists, and they say they don't agree with fine-tuning. So I think the number of scientists that agree with fine-tuning is exaggerated. But there are certainly many scientists that do think that certain things are finely tuned. However, you have to be careful, because they don't necessarily use the phrase fine-tuning in the way that theists use it. Because what they maybe mean to fine-tuning is that the observation and the theory don't agree, or that some parameter in the theory has to be fixed in order to make it agree with observations. That's not the same sense of fine-tuning, which is that it's fine-tuned for life, which is the argument needed for theism. So let me give you an example of how these theists exaggerate the the fine-tuning. Okay, so there's something called the cosmological constant. Okay,
Einstein had it in his theory, and he said it's one of the biggest mistakes he's made in his
but
career.
it turns out he was right, and it wasn't a mistake, because in fact we do observe there is a cosmological constant.
What's the observable cosmological constant?
What? Sorry.
Where was that observed as a cosmological constant?
Okay, what we observe is that the rate of expansion of the universe is accelerating. Okay, and if that's true, then there's a cosmological, or there's at least something very similar to a cosmological constant. Okay.
So by a cosmological constant, you mean a universe that has always existed?
No, I don't mean that. I mean there's a property of space. Okay, that has that leads it to expand all by itself. It doesn't need a kick, let's say, from the Big Bang, but it's a fact property of space-time that it can cause accelerated expansion. Because what Einstein was trying to do was keep the universe static. So it looked like it was going to either collapse or expand. He says, well, if I put this cosmological constant in and I give it a certain value, then I can keep it static. Okay, but the constant is in there. It's in the equations. Okay, so people thought, well, it must be zero, but in fact, it turns out it's not zero, and we can observe that directly by the accelerated expansion of the universe. Okay, it may not be an absolute constant, but it certainly looks very close to a constant, and that's all we need to make the point. Okay, now people say the value of this, the value of the dark energy, okay, or a cosmological constant, if it is a constant, is very finely tuned to 120 decimal places is the claim. Okay, but what you have to, now and you're thinking, well, that must mean a designer, right?
You've given me
it seems to be giving you a point. But wait, just wait a moment, because I'm going to turn.
There's going to be a theory.
No, because we're going to show you why it's wrong. Okay, now you have, and now so theists have said, look, 120 orders of magnitude fine-tuning, it must be God. Okay, so there's a number of things to say about that. First off, it's not fine-tuned for life to 120 orders of magnitude.
Okay.
That where this 120 orders of magnitude comes from, is, hey, how you doing? Okay, where this comes from is you use quantum field theory to predict the value of the dark energy, and you find that it's mismatched by about 120 orders of magnitude. And what physicists thought was, well, there'll be some symmetry principle that cancels this out, and it'll cancel it out to zero. And what they found was it doesn't cancel out to zero; it cancels out to almost zero, but not quite. So that's the sense.
Over time,
that's the sense that it's fine-tuned to 120 orders of magnitude. But it's not the sense in which it's used for this deist-atheist debate, because it's not true that if you moved it by 0.000 120 orders of magnitude, that you wouldn't have life. That's not true. You could have the dark energy be 10 times smaller, and we'd still be okay. You could make it 100 times smaller, we'd still be okay. You could make it 1 trillion times smaller, and we would still be okay.
Basically now, isn't it? So now.
Well, any time, it doesn't matter. It makes no difference, right? You can make it a gazillion times smaller, any number you like, and we would still be here, right? So it's not the case that it's fine-tuned for life to 120 orders of magnitude. Okay. Now it is true.
So at what point? Right? At one point is it the case that it's fine-tuned?
Well, it's fine-tuned it's fine-tuned to 120 orders of magnitude in the sense of if we use this theory to predict it, we'll get it wrong by that amount.
Okay.
So we say the theory has to be fine-tuned, but that's not the same as saying it's fine-tuned for life, which is what the theistic argument, the theistic sense of fine-tuning is. So that's why I said you have to understand that people use the phrase fine-tuning in different senses,
to be honest with you,
and it's being used in two different senses here. Okay. Furthermore, yes.
That does seem to be semantics to me. I mean,
no, it's not. It's fundamentally important.
What I need to do is I need to look into that, but it seems like semantics to me.
No, it's absolutely not semantics.
What you're saying is this, that a theory states that if this theory is correct with regards to physics or whatever model they've had, in that model it appears to be fine-tuned. If that theory is correct, then whatever.
But it's not fine-tuned for life.
I understand that.
And in order to make the theistic argument of fine-tuning, it has to be fine-tuned for life. Otherwise, all you're really saying is our theory needs to be improved. That's all you're really saying. That the theory is incomplete. Well, big fucking deal. Who cares? So what? That has no implications for God at all. You're just saying we don't have a complete theory. Well, big deal. Of course we don't.
Yeah. Also, with regards to where we are now, I mean, the theory is basically stating that there has to have been a certain point where it was highly improbable. All we're stating is that...
No, that's nothing to do with improbability. No. In order to say something's improbable, you have to know the parameter space. You have to know
all the variables.
Yeah, this is not probability. This is not really. I don't think that you can really say that. Okay. And there are.
I mean, you know, from basic probability, what we learn in basic maths is that this is where probability works. You know, fine tuning.
Well, all right. So, in order, all right, let's just think about probability. No. But you're missing the point. You're missing the point. In order to make the theistic case against for fine tuning, you have to say that it's fine tuned for life. Okay, that's a different sense in what's being used here. Okay, and so there's a confusion. Okay. Now, you could argue that there is a limit to how big the dark energy is. If it were a lot bigger, then it's true that we would then have fine-tuning for life. Okay, but that's not the 120 orders of magnitude. I mean, I've seen estimates. You know, you could have dark energy 10 times bigger, maybe even 100 times bigger, and life would still be okay. You couldn't make it 1,000 times bigger. Then I think you wouldn't have life. Okay. So, but it's not the 100. It's not like 0.000.
There's room for maneuver.
Right. Okay. Now here's a problem then. All right. Because now, are you going to claim it's fine-tuned or not?
Based upon
because there does seem to be a lot more leeway for life than this notion of 120 orders of magnitude.
Based upon that, I would say that if that's the case and it's observable, then of course you can't say it's completely fine-tuned. You can still say that it's likely, because even then you can't mess around with it too much.
There is a limit to what that number could be.
There's a limit. So there's not completely room for.
But then you could also argue, and Don Page, who is a theologian, no, sorry, he's not a theologian. He's a Christian, evangelical Christian, but he's also a well-respected cosmologist. And he said, I think the dark energy is not fine-tuned for life, because he said, well, what if it was? We have a small value, positive value for the dark energy. He said it would be better for life if we had a small negative value. Yeah, that would be better for life. Because what the dark energy having a small positive value means is it shortens the time that life can exist for. Whereas if you had a small negative value, you could have a longer period for life. Okay, so he thinks the dark energy is not fine-tuned for life, and he published a paper saying this. Yeah, and so. You know, this stuff is much more controversial than what you think.
Okay. I mean, for me, I always knew this. I always knew that, you know, there were scientists that agree and disagree. But
the point is, we don't know. We can't do an experiment where we change the constant and see what would happen.
Okay, look now
look, there's no life. Right? We can't do that experiment. So we have to do theoretical extrapolation. No, I'm not opposed to theoretical extrapolation. I think that's an important part of physics, and we can make some conclusions on that even. But we have to say that we can't be so confident.
Are you okay,
Okay. Now, furthermore, with respect to the dark energy, okay, Steven Weinberg, who's a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, he made a prediction. He predicted that we would find dark energy before it was found, 10 years before it was found. He predicted this.
Even quarks, I mean, it was found, it was recently observed.
Right. He predicted this, and he predicted it based off multiverse theory. He said, look, if we live in a multiverse, we'll find that the dark energy will have a value that's not zero, but won't be too much higher than zero. It should have a small positive value.
Sometimes that's extrapolated. I mean, even
he did extrapolate, but the point is,
even without the multiverse theory, you could have inferred why dark energy is there. There's other theories.
Like how?
I've heard of theories just with regards to the way matter is created, and as there's observed, there's positive, you know, there's like, for example, neutrons, positons, there's also the opposite.
Yes, antimatter, yes.
Exactly. So dark energy and things like that, there's other theories.
But dark energy has got nothing to do with antimatter.
Okay.
Nothing to do with it.
For me, I just need to look at more into neutrons.
There's nothing, it's nothing, as far as I am aware, I know of no connection to antimatter, and I don't think you've established one here.
But from what I've heard, I thought this was going to happen.
Okay. Now, let's go to the more general case about fine-tuning, okay? So let me present a problem to you about fine-tuning that was invented by a guy who's a professor of philosophy of physics, but he's also a believer in God. He's a Christian, not a Muslim, but he's a believer in God. And he thinks that if you believe in an omnipotent God, which I presume as a Muslim you do, that you shouldn't believe in fine-tuning. That God cannot explain fine-tuning. Okay, and I'll tell you what his criticism is. Okay, he says that if you believe in an omnipotent God, you should believe that God is the author of all things. And he says, as a Christian, that's what I believe. Okay, and I presume as a Muslim you should believe the same thing. Okay, now the argument for fine-tuning that theists use is that God wants there to be a universe with life. So he turns the dials, finely tunes them, so that there's a universe with life. That's a basic argument. Agreed? Okay. Now, he says, if you think about it deeply, you'll realise that this argument cannot work. Okay? That a theist cannot make this argument. A deist could, but a theist cannot. Why not? Because you have to also believe that he's turning the dials because the universe is not set up for life. The probability for life is low. That's what fine-tuning means, right? Is that, or in this setting, okay, that it means that the probability for life is low. But if you believe that God wants life, you've got to ask the question, who sets the probabilities? Like when I make a game, right? If I say I'm going to make a game of dice, right, I create the dice, don't I? So I set the fact that there is 1 in 6 probability of 6. Okay, I could make a dice where it's 6 on every side, and it would be 100% probability of 6. Okay, so if you think that there's a being that wants a 6, the fact that there's only one side of the dice where there's 6,
what theists do is they just use that to state that we never invented this fine-tuning. They're just stating that it's been observed.
No, it hasn't been observed. It's been theoretically extrapolated.
Again, what we say
but that's just false. It's not been observed. That's just false statement.
Okay, what I'll say to you is that you're saying it's false, but again, it's been extrapolated from things in physics which have been observed.
Fine.
It's a lot.
But then if I said the multiverse has been observed, you would shoot me down, right?
Same as you're shooting me down.
Right.
We disagree.
Okay.
I mean that's the whole premise of the fact that we're talking because we clearly don't agree.
Of course we don't agree.
You'll shoot me down.
Of course we don't agree. Of course we don't agree. What I'm saying is you can't observe fine-tuning. You extrapolate. Okay.
You extrapolate.
Okay. Right. Okay. Now, you can't see what would happen if a constant of nature changed. That is an experiment you cannot do.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't go into the past.
Right. You can run some computer simulation. You can do some paper and pencil calculations.
Yeah.
That's all fine. All right. But don't say it's been observed. All right. Okay. Now the point is, yes, you saw it in physics. You saw physicists saying this. But I think you're misunderstanding the point. Right. Here's an analogy that. Hans of Olsen is the guy's name. He gives an analogy of this. Suppose you see that you've been kidnapped by aliens and they make you play Russian roulette. Yeah. You know how Russian roulette works? Okay. All right. So you pull the trigger and you don't die. Now, you have then a hypothesis. How is it that I didn't die? Maybe the aliens are benevolent and didn't want me to die. They wanted me to live. Okay? So now I'm going to try and check if that hypothesis is true or false. And I'm going to now open the barrel of the gun. Okay? Now, if I find in the barrel of the gun that all the chambers have got bullets in them, apart from the one that I pulled, does that confirm my hypothesis or disconfirm my hypothesis that the aliens were benevolently trying to make me survive? What does it do to the hypothesis?
I mean, in that scenario, it doesn't really do anything because...
No, it does. It disconfirms your hypothesis.
It doesn't infer intention.
Well, if they were wanting me to survive, I should expect... what I should expect to find is that all the bullets, all the chambers were empty. So it may well be that they are benevolent. It's not proof that they're not benevolent, but that evidence by itself is disconfirmation of the benevolence hypothesis. Okay? So the fact that the probability is low, so basically when I look at the chamber, I see that the probability of me surviving that event was low. So I'm now trying to explain how is it that I survived. Maybe I was lucky, right? Who knows? Or maybe there's some other benevolence that I don't know about. But when I look in the chamber, that is evidence against the benevolence hypothesis. Okay? So when we look at fine-tuning,
or in favour of it, basically.
no, it's not. How can it be in favour of it?
If you look into it and you find that they're all empty.
Yeah, but if you looked into it and you saw that there's all bullets in the chambers, then that in itself, by itself, is disconfirmation of the benevolence hypothesis. Agreed? Do you agree with that? Okay. So now, if we look at the constants of nature, and if we agree that there's a low probability for life given a certain value for the constants, right? That is disconfirmation that there's a creator that wants life. Because if the creator wanted life, he sets the probabilities. So we should expect the opposite of fine-tuning. We should find the opposite. But we don't find that. We find fine-tuning, allegedly. Right? So if there is fine-tuning, that seems to be not evidence of God. Right? Or at least not a theistic God.
I wouldn't agree with that.
Why not? Okay, tell me why not.
Because
what's wrong with the logic?
The logic is that, look, what you're trying to state, I mean, I've lost it somewhere down the line because I don't understand how you can infer from that. See the analogy of Russian roulette now.
Yeah.
Let's say that the analogy here is, okay, so basically let's say if God put we find, for example, that if you lift up that chamber, there's no bullets in there. The same way if you lift up the observable theories of the universe, you find that for the fact that there being no bullets in the chamber is the same as fine-tuning. So
no.
Right, let me finish.
It's not. That's wrong.
No, but let me finish. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but you're wrong.
I understand. Yeah, but I disagree.
That's just wrong maths. Okay. There's things we can disagree about, but you can't just disagree about basic maths.
Okay. But let me explain.
Right.
Because I know you're saying it's wrong, but let me explain it.
Right.
Now, with regards to that, if there's fine-tuning in the universe which has pushed the whole planet and which has pushed us towards life, for example, for things to be finely tuned so that life can come into existence over here only.
Yeah.
Because we're not just stating that. I understand your point. If it was just about life existing, then God should have made it so probable that life is just popping out left, right, and centre. Mars has got people living there.
No, that's not the point. You're missing the point.
Okay, but my point is this. Yeah. My point is, our theistic view states that there's life, and also that God has made it so that this planet is one of the only planets where there is life, and He's made it finely tuned so that there is something unique about our existence, and it's something which is highly improbable other than with God. That's what we're saying. So that theory which you mentioned, with all due respect, I understand it's a theory. He said that the fine-tuning is an argument against God, and it's an argument against the whole idea of, an omnipotent God. But
okay. I think you're misunderstanding the argument. It's an argument against an omnipotent God, because let me put it this way. Do you remember? You probably don't. You're probably too young. But when I was a kid,
25, so
you're 25. I'm 45.
Okay.
When I was a kid, right, we had to hold.
With you?
Sorry?
Are they with you then?
No, I don't know who these people are. Okay. When I was a kid, when you wanted to watch TV and wanted to get a good reception, if you had an old TV, right, you had to hold this aerial up.
What's the name of your thingy, bro? Dow Media.
Okay. You had to hold an aerial up. And you had to, sometimes, if the aerial wasn't very well made, you had to hold it up in just the right position. So if we wanted to have a good signal, we'd have to hold the aerial in the right spot.
To get a signal.
Okay. So you had to finely tune the position of the aerial. Oh, you do remember that? Okay. All right.
Just get a metal hanger.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. No, but the thing is, you only have to do that because the TV's not very well designed.
Yeah.
Nowadays, we've got much better technology.
And you have to finely tune it so that you get
to get the TV image. Right. But nowadays, we don't need to do that.
Yeah.
Do we? But why? Because TVs are better. Technology's moved on. We've got better stuff. Okay. Now the thing is, if God has to fine-tune all these constants, that implies He's got shit TV.
That he's not good in his systems in terms
Exactly. He's got to fine-tune things because the system is not set up. Let's put it this way. I've got to rig the dice to get a 6 because the dice is not set up to guarantee a 6. Okay. But if I want a 6, I could have just made the dice with 6 on every side.
Okay.
I wouldn't need to rig the dice.
Okay.
I only need to rig the dice because the game is not set up for the outcome that I want.
Okay.
Right? So you see that it makes sense if there's a deist God. Do you understand what deism is, right?
Yeah. But
okay, but it doesn't make sense for a theist God because a theist God,
he's made it fine for no reason. And
exactly.
He's got
why does he need to? You need to fine-tune something to overcome some other difficulty, some obstacle. But God doesn't have any obstacles.
Like the old TV.
Exactly. You're right. But God can't have any obstacles, or the theist God. The deist God could have obstacles. So it's a good argument for deism.
Okay.
But it's a terrible argument for theism because he's got to overcome this obstacle.
Okay, I understand your point,
right.
But my answer to that would be this. If you were to find a bottle on the floor, or anything that you find, and then you say this thing has come into existence, there's two ways of looking at it.
Yeah.
And this is the way we live our lives. You live your life, I live my life like this.
Yeah.
If you drive along in the middle of the desert, you see a car there,
right.
There's two ways of looking at it. You can look at it with the theory you've just put forward, where you can say, okay, look, this has come about because somebody created it specifically, they engineered it, they made it.
Yeah.
Or you could have this other view where you say, well, you know what, these things are probably lying around randomly all over the place, and it's more highly probable, like the whole TV thing, where, you know what, I'm going to take the view that this happens. This is
you're giving me Paley's watchmaker argument, right? You're giving me Paley's watchmaker argument.
Basically, that, basically.
Okay, it is that. There's no difference. You're giving me Paley's watchmaker argument, and no one. I mean, people have disputed this argument for hundreds of years, and let me explain why. Because it's a terrible argument.
In your opinion, again.
Well, okay. Let me explain why. Okay, sure. Let me explain why I think it's a terrible argument. You see a watch lying on the beach. You are right to conclude our watchmaker made it. But you know why you're right? Because you've seen watches being made, right? So you know what watches look like.
Not necessarily.
No. It is
not necessarily.
that.
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily, because again.
Hang on. Let me finish the point. Right? You've seen watches being made.
I've never seen a watch being made.
Okay, but you know that things like watches are made in that way.
You know, I've seen things in my life I've never seen before, and I know someone's made it.
Okay. The problem is you cannot extrapolate that to the universe. You don't know how a universe is coming to being.
You really can.
Okay.
You really can.
You really can't. Okay.
Simply by inferring there's creation. This is the point. This is what
when you say there's creation, what do you mean?
With regards to living beings, plants, life, things which require.
But they evolve.
Okay, look.
Living things evolve.
Okay, look.
Okay.
Look.
I mean, that's a separate argument.
That's a separate argument.
But if you can't say I see living things, therefore I infer creation by a god.
Okay. The reason we say that is for this reason. Living things and DNA. DNA has a structure.
Of course it does.
Imagine it as a book.
Yeah. You don't have to explain to me how to do
Yeah.
Okay, come on, give me some credit.
I'll give you some credit. Yeah. My point is, if you imagine it as a book, so if you look at it in terms of, if you have a simple book that just says A in there, it's a very simple book. Like let's say concrete. Let's say concrete is like a book that's just says A in there. It's not the most complex thing. It is quite complex to be fair, but it's just like A.
So you're saying if there's complexity, there's a design. Is that the
complexity? Then there's a design, for example.
Okay, that's just wrong.
But not just that. If there's information, it's structured in a way, the same way as a book is written.
So when you say information, do you mean Kolmogorov information, or do you mean algorithmic information?
I mean like DNA.
But there's two definitions of information that are used by information theorists. So which one are you using?
In terms of like what you say, the actual names, like these two names.
But there's two different fundamental ways that we define information.
Okay, well,
which one are you using?
The way I've just stated to you, I don't know which one that falls.
So you don't know anything about information theory?
I've just told you I know about information. I know enough about information.
But you don't know the basics of how information is defined in information theory?
Philosophical information theory.
What do you mean philosophical information theory?
What you're basically stating is that these are the two theories on information. I'm stating to you that it's like this.
Okay.
Have I got a brain? Have I got a brain?
Yes, of course you have a brain.
Do I need to know about the whole theory of neuroscience to know I've got a brain? No. Same with information. I can know about information.
But if you're going to make an argument, But if you're going to make an argument, well, let me finish. I haven't made the argument yet. I'm just asking you a question.
No, you did.
I'm trying to probe.
No, you did.
I'm trying to probe.
Because you said I don't know about information because I don't know information.
Okay, hang on.
That's a ridiculous argument.
No. Let me make the argument. Let me make the argument. Okay. Let me make the argument. Then you'll hear it, and then we'll understand what we're talking about. One way to define information, is let's suppose I have a coin behind my back.
Have you got any contact information or anything like that?
Yeah, sure.
Because I need to go and pray, to be honest with you, so I'll come back and discuss something like that.
Yeah, I'm going to go soon. Let me just finish this point, okay? All right. Let me give you an example, okay? Maybe this will be better. Yeah. Okay. Suppose we're standing here and there's a puddle of water, okay? And now let's imagine there's a bit of wind and some dirt blows into the puddle.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's a natural way that we could get some increase in complexity. Because now what happens is,
slight increase,
right? Okay, I'll give you another. Let me give you
mediocre.
All right, let me give you something that you can do as experiment. Okay, get a cup of tea, pour some milk in it.
Yes.
Okay. Now what happens is, when you let the milk fall into the tea, you can do it with a glass cup. Okay. What happens is,
To be honest with you, I'm not satisfied with that level of complexity. The example
well, hang on. This is why it's important to define what we mean. This is where the definition of information becomes important.
Yeah.
Right. The way we generally define information, or one way to define it, is called Cosmology of information. Okay. What you do is you take a picture of something, and it's how much code you need to write to compress some information. Okay. So if I take a picture of a cup of tea with no milk in it, that will easily compressed because it's uniform. Okay. Now when I pour the milk in, this a very complicated structure forms. Okay. So the size of the compressed file, if you like, would be bigger. Yeah. Because more information. That's what we mean by information. Okay, so if you pour milk into a cup of tea, you will get more complexity and more information. Okay, that's how we define information. Okay, so if we define it this way, the Kolmogorov definition of information, well, you can get increase in complexity completely naturally. I mean, okay, it's a human being pouring the cup in, but that's why I gave the example of dirt falling into a puddle. That would be completely natural, and the information is increasing. Now, there's another way you can increase information. There's another definition of information, which is called algorithmic information. And it's basically, if I have a coin in my hand, and I have it like that, it's heads or tails, right? You don't know. When I reveal it, you now know. Okay, so if you have, that gives you one bit of information. That's how we define it. It's a reduction in uncertainty. Okay. Now, how do you get more information? By having more uncertainty. So actually, random strings will generate information. That's just a fact of information theory. So if I ask you, what has more information? Yeah. What has more information? This is how. See, you've never read anything about information theory.
No,
I suggest you do.
Right. I'll look into just that basic thing of.
Can I give you one book to read? I know you've read theologians. Can I ask you to read one atheist book? It's called.
I read a lot more than you think.
Okay, fine.
You know why I got into this whole topic?
Go on.
My biology teacher told me, look, your religion is false.
Yeah.
Outright, he said your religion is false.
Okay.
You know, there's a lot of evidence against it. Look into it. I looked into it and I realised the whole, neo-Darwinism and Darwin theory in general. There's so many holes in it. You know, the theories of the multiverse. I find laughable. Honestly, I find laughable. I find it ridiculous.
Well, you've laughed at it. You didn't even understand how what the physics behind it.
No, because
I think that's not really fair.
The thing is, because of what I've read, even with regards to before, like you've agreed that a lot of the theories came out before the evidence came out.
Well, of course they do. If the theory came after the evidence, we wouldn't be impressed.
No.
It's much more impressive if the theory comes out and then it makes predictions for evidence. Otherwise, you're just retrodicting. No one would be impressed with that.
But the reason why that can be false is because a person can live his entire life. That's called being delusional. A person can live his entire life having a theory. For example, I could have a theory, I'm God.
But then you should throw out all of physics.
No, you shouldn't. No, you shouldn't.
You should. Because hang on.
No, wait. Now this is scientific theory. There's two ways. One is you come up with a theory,
right,
and then you observe it.
Yeah.
Fair play, you can do that. But the better way of doing things is if you just observe things, and then based upon what you've observed, you generate a theory and you say, okay, look.
I disagree. Let me explain why I disagree.
Well,
can I just? All right, well, hang on. Okay, one last thing. Can you read this book, The Big Picture by Sean Carroll?
By Sean.
Thank you. The Big Picture by Sean Carroll.
By Sean Carroll.
Will you read that one book?
Yeah, I'll read that.
Because it will explain all this stuff about information theory.
I'll look into that. Yeah.
The Big Picture, Sean Carroll. There's a lot of atheists that I think talk a load of bullshit. Okay, so he's the guy that I think. I don't know if I agree with everything he says, but more than anyone else. The Big Picture, Sean Carroll. Sean Carroll. Okay, he's a professional cosmologist. He actually writes the textbooks. Yeah, if you do a course in general relativity, he wrote your textbook. Okay, so he's the top guy. Yeah, Sean Carroll, The Big Picture. Cosmologist. He's a professional cosmologist and he goes into information theory. And I got the example of the cup of tea and the milk from him.
You know what? Even with regards regards to this, the thing I'd conclude on is this: there's not one thing here. You know, there's so many issues I could delve into.
Of course we can,
in Islam,
and I can do the same.
Of course, you can do the same. But even like with regards to in Islam, okay, look, I know there's constant people have theories against that, but there's so many things which add up and which they kind of substantiate the claim.
Well, I don't agree that they add up.
In your opinion, but you know,
of course, in
like
your
when you like the certain things you don't know, like with regards to the Quran and with regards to.
Well, I have read the Quran.
But like with regards to Prophet Muhammad and the prophecies made in other books, the Vedas.
I mean, we don't have time to do
We don't have time to go into that. But my point is, for me personally, and this isn't me just being ignorant. I know this comes across a lot. People are ignorant. They don't know. They haven't listened to it.
Right.
Okay, so I haven't looked into it in terms of your depth.
Can I make a suggestion? Watch my videos. Okay. Do you know my YouTube channel? Do you know my YouTube channel? Skydive Phil. Okay. Okay. Do you have a phone?
I've got a phone there.
Right. Just do this and then go. Okay. I know you've got to pray.
Subscribe to your.
No. Not subscribe. Just watch one video. Just watch one video. Okay.
I mean, I'll watch it, but what I'd say to you is that it appears that you're quite adamant on your views to the degree and to the level that you're possibly, again, this is just my opinion. Are you an atheist?
I am, yes.
What I would say to you is that possibly even to the degree that there's some level of, I know you won't admit this, and this is going to be offensive to you.
Okay, go Skydive Phil.
Yeah, but what I'd say to you is that part of this...
Phil, Phil.
Yeah, part of this is an emotional argument on your part as well. I know that's going to annoy you.
It's all one word, but maybe you'll find it. Yeah, click on the YouTube channel. Now, what I want you to watch is, I made a film with Stephen Hawking recently, is not the one with Hawking. Okay. It's two ones you might consider. That is me and another theist discussing the multiverse, and amazingly, he's a theist. He's been arguing for fine-tuning for years, and he agrees that there is evidence for a multiverse. And we did that on a radio show, which is a Christian radio show. Okay, but the one, so either watch that one, Atheists Debate the Multiverse, or watch this one, which is all the scientists that I interviewed, Alan Guth, who's often quoted by theists, believe it or not, because they think his theories prove the beginning of the universe. He made a theory with a guy called Alex Valenkin. Have you heard of the Borda-Guth-Valenkin theorem? Okay, he is Guth of the Borda-Guth-Valenkin theorem, and we discuss it with him. Okay, so that's the one that I think you should watch. And we go into the science of the multiverse and why, again, I don't want to claim it's proven, it's not, it's still controversial, but the evidence is better than what you think it is. Okay, so just watch that one if you're only going to watch one. Obviously, I would love it if you watched all of it, right? But if you're only going to watch one, watch that. Okay, and these guys are the absolute top people in the field. They are some of the most respected cosmologists in the world. One of the guys in there was the head scientist, he gave the results for the most expensive Planck satellite that the European Space Agency launched.
One thing I would say to you is that there are certain things that I've seen with cosmologists and physicists which make me question their whole credibility and their whole approach to science. Now, you can agree with that or disagree with that.
Okay.
Now, I know you've researched it and you feel as if you're more intellectual or you know more about this, that. But things like the cosmic...
I only know so much. I mean, I'm not an expert.
Okay, but look, things like the cosmic bootstrap theory, you know, you've researched that, of course.
Depends what you mean by cosmic bootstrap theory.
The theory that things are propelled just by their own energy, or just by their own things are basically propelled and they're increased just by their own. It's like the example of a cowboy that lifts his own bootstraps, and from that he can lift himself up.
Okay.
Stephen Hawking he proposed this theory.
I've worked with Stephen Hawking.
Apparently, somebody else said.
I've never heard him use that term.
I don't know how long you worked with him for. Well,
I worked on a movie. I worked on a movie with him and his colleagues, explaining his theories of the origin of the universe, and I never heard them use that term. And I've read the materials, and I've never heard them use that term. So I wonder.
I know some physicists have
okay. Well, there are some theories. There is another theory. There is another theory that would match that better. Okay. So what's your point?
My point is that I've noticed that there are some very strange theories which scientists propagate with regards to physics, cosmology, things like this. Which, when you look at how ridiculous it appears to seem, and others other scientists call them out. This is a very ridiculous theory.
So there is a theory that I think would match the bootstrap maybe more. There's a theory that the universe created itself.
What I'll do, Phil,
okay? Is that what you're referring to?
Phil, the point is, regardless of what I'm referring to, from what I've seen, is that sometimes scientists seem to back and refer to theories which are just, they're nonsensical and they're ridiculous.
So Hawking's theory of the origin of the universe, you think is nonsensical and ridiculous?
Hawking's theory of the universe?
Yeah, his theory of the origin of the universe. Do you think it's nonsensical and ridiculous?
I think.
On what basis do you say that? On what basis do you say that?
Again, what I have to say.
But what does his theory say?
Again, what I have to say is.
What does his theory say?
Not with regards to what I've heard.
What does his theory say? What's the basic principle of the theory?
Okay, the basic principle of his theory is that obviously with regards to the universe being created, there was a Big Bang, and obviously when it was created, there was where we live in, and he said about the multiverse, he's propagated the multiverse. So he stated that our universe is one of many. In universes where things are created with, for example, the Earth not being the way it is, the Earth can just be filled up with
go on.
Yeah, so
but that's not really his theory.
It's not really his theory, but he
does propagate it.
Again, he propagates it as part of.
But that's not his theory.
But again, whether it's his theory or not, he uses that in his overall explanation.
So why is it ridiculous?
For the reason I've told you.
What reason?
Because I feel that whether or not scientists are scientists are humans at the end of the day.
Yes.
So whether you say it or not, there's an emotional argument. You scientists are not people that you remove your emotions from it and you remove your own.
But you can't say the fact that someone has an emotion behind an argument doesn't make it ridiculous.
Of course, but what I say is.
Why is it ridiculous?
What I say is because of the fact that sometimes when you look at when they try and propagate a theory, they propagate it more based upon their emotions and what their own theology is, as opposed to.
But that doesn't make the theory ridiculous.
As opposed to the actual evidence, if the evidence isn't strong enough for them to be so adamant.
Well, okay, even if there's no evidence behind a theory, that doesn't make the theory ridiculous. It could have a lot of theoretical plausibility, agreed?
Yes.
So why is it
evidence
ridiculous?
to the contrary, then it
what
is
okay.
Like fine-tuning again, it comes back to that. Fine-tuning is the
there's an emotion behind fine-tuning, right? Theists propagate fine-tuning because they think it's going to back up their religious views, right?
But
so what's the difference?
The difference is, like I've said to you, that there's evidence in the scientists that highly propagate that is the case.
Hang on, how is that different? That's not different.
It's different for the reason that, like I've said to you, there's not one variable. There's many variables that have to be taken.
Okay, and there's many lines of evidence for a multiverse.
But we're not talking about just multiverse. We're talking about all of that together substantiates fine-tuning.
Okay. So hang on, let's deal with one issue at a time.
Again, Phil, like I've said to you, it comes down to that's my opinion on that. I'll look into your videos. I'll look into it. But again, it comes down to there's a lot more.
I think you should be informed about.
There's a lot more.
If you're going to say one of the top scientists of the 20th century is saying things that is ridiculous and ludicrous,
then I need to be more informed on this, and I need to be more examples.
Yes. But you need to explain why. You can't just say, well, he's got emotion behind it. That's just not a good argument. Nice to meet you, man. Cosmological argument is that